Olá, Salama, Zishil, Saubonan, Bonjour. Hello, Africa. Hello, friends of the world. Welcome to Power of Africa 2023. My name is Momad Mukanyeya, and I speak from Matola, the largest industrial city in Mozambique. I am the manager of Mozambique Energy Intelligence, a local think tank and a leading local content company. And today we are talking about energy. With us, Ms. Tandy and Ms. Taffy from South Africa and Zimbabwe. And this is the energy panel. The topic of the year, diversifying Africa's energy and power sources, the potent options available. Well, I will now welcome Ms. Tandy to introduce herself.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Welcome.
Momadi. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. I'm honored actually to be here. So my name is Tandi Umatabete Wakangongo. I am from South Africa, based in Durban in KwaZulu Natal, and I run a business in the energy space, in the oil and gas industry. So I run a petrol service station.
Thank you. Well, congratulations. Now I welcome Ms. Taffy from Zimbabwe. Hello, Ms. Taffy. How are you, Ms. Taffy?
Hi, Mamadi. Hi, Tandy. It's good to
Hello.
be here. Power Africa 2023. My name is Tafichi Kwakwata from Claymore Solar, based in Harare, Zimbabwe. We are an EPC company within the renewable energy space. We've been in operation in Zimbabwe since 2006. Our main focus of business currently is productive use of renewable energies, with a focus on small scale farmers looking to improve their livelihoods, as well as guarantee their uh, food security, so to speak. So yeah, so it's good to be here and looking forward to this discussion.
Well, thank you. Again, this is the Power of Africa 2023, and this is the energy panel. The topic of the year, diversifying Africa's energy and power sources, the potent options available. And to help us understand this topic, we introduced Mr. Tandy and Mr. Taffy. And the question will be the first, what are the opportunities that exist in diversifying and making existing energy sources efficient in relation to Africa's current sources and needs? Ms. Tandy, would you help us to understand?
Um, Maybe I will respond in the energy context in South Africa. As all
Yes.
of us know that South Africa currently has a very devastating energy crisis, with the homes and businesses suffering the blackouts for hours in a day, and it is a crisis that we are faced with as businesses. Directly to my business, in my petrol service station, if there is a blackout, obviously I need to use the generator as a backup. And the generator cost that we are incurring in our businesses is really getting out of hand. And this crisis that we are faced with has seen some of the businesses shutting down. Currently, it's really a survival. We are in survival mode when it comes to energy in South Africa. But we are hopeful that as a country we understand our crisis, and that's the first step towards success. The second step would be then to put measures in place to make sure that we mitigate these kind of mitigations before they do major damages in terms of closing down small and medium sized businesses, which are a huge contributing factor when it comes to employment in our country.
Thank you. That was clarifying. And the question will be the same for Mr. Taffy. What are the opportunities that exist in diversifying and making existing energy sources efficient in relation to Africa's current sources and needs? Mr. Tafi?
Yeah, I mean, yes, much of what Tandy said makes sense in that regard. I think, as we all know, Africa needs to produce, and production requires a lot of energy, and obviously at the best possible price. So, to this end, solutions that achieve the need, which is providing power without the cost, the heavy cost that comes with it. So, for example, Tandy service station, when power is down, would probably notice that a lot of people are buying a lot of diesel, petrol to run their generators. That simply means that the cost of energy is increasing because we're using a source of energy that would obviously be expensive. So that's outside of the normal parameters or the normal norms of costing when you're costing your production. So Africa needs to produce. We need to produce to feed ourselves, to clothe ourselves, to export and earn money. So, for example, water pumping. If you're water pumping in farming, this can be achieved without any battery storage, for example. So the storage becomes the water. So if we pump the water into a tank, we're storing that water without the presence of a battery. Solar freezers, hold over freezers, they're able to store their energy in eutectic tanks and store food overnight without the need again for a storage battery. So we're diversifying what is normal. So if we have a battery bank in a system and we take the battery bank out, we've reduced the cost. We've reduced the cost of producing. We've diversified how we're storing our energy. In the case of Tandy service station, we're storing energy in fuel, in the form of diesel, in the form of petrol. But how do we take that out and use it somewhere else so that we diversify how we store the energy, and without changing much on how we use it to produce efficiently? So, in my view, investment targeted at these areas where we are changing to suit Africa. So if we've got, you've got the vaccine fridges in the clinics at the moment, and these are direct drive units that don't need a battery. So already a development has been made globally over the years to bring in these units that can store these vaccines, bring health to the most rural of areas, but limiting the cost of maintenance, limiting the cost of repeated costs of maintaining those systems. So if we invest in these areas, we target our investors in these areas, we will deliver greater impact and obviously greater profitable results that will develop, for example, the farming sector, or energize e-mobility. We're able to get to places, get e-bikes, get e-ambulances to move women from their vulnerable places to clinics where they can get services without it costing a lot more money. I mean, if you think about it, if you pump water into a big tank on top of a hill and distribute that water into a village, and that village no longer has to go to the river to pick up water, you've given them time. Time is valuable. You've given them the ability to take that time and put it into something else. They're able to produce more. You've given them that ability to produce more that they can feed those in the cities or those outside the cities, outside the country. That means financial security. Financial security leads to just proper improvement in self dignity, self determination of where you want to go. So there's a lot that we can do in terms of diversifying where we're going. I could mention things like solar dryers, solar mills, anything that we can run during the day when we're awake and produce. So yeah, that's my view of how I believe where I believe the opportunities lie. They don't just necessarily lie in us putting in generators, solar panels, batteries. They lie elsewhere. They lie in the populace or the people that we're trying to help having the ability to produce more, having the ability to earn more, having the ability to come back into the towns and feed industry, feed the economy. And in that contribution, it's dignifying, isn't it? Yeah. But that's my thought. Yeah. Thanks, Muddy.
Well, that was really great to understand. It was really enlightening. I understand here that businesses are in survival mode. We understand that Africa needs to produce, and production needs energy, and we need to provide energy to those companies and entities producing more for the benefit of the Africa. and the cost of energy is increasing. Of course, it will inflate the final costs, and it's critical to store and use efficiently the energy that we have, even the traditional sources, fossil and renewables. And it's critical to target investment in innovative areas to save time and produce more by supplying also basic services that will also help the communities to attain, at least to achieve the financial security for their well-being. The second question will be, are the new energy technologies that answer African energy needs? Or do the new energy technology answer the African energy needs? Ms. Tafi, would you care? That's you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mamadi. Yeah, so I mean, the basic question is, are new energy technologies the answer to Africa's energy needs? And my view of it is that not always the case. Um, you know, solar panels, fuel as in Tandy supply, for example. Let me quantify my thoughts in that way. Is that if we streamline and make what we have more efficient, we will deliver, right? Africa is vast. I mean, look at South Africa, for example. It's a vast country. Even Zimbabwe is quite vast. So if we bring in electric vehicles to move product from point A to point B, from Durban, where Tandy is, all the way to Johannesburg, is there any one vehicle that exists today that can do that in one drive? Probably not. You've got to stop and recharge. Do we have the charge stations available across the country to be able to charge all those vehicles efficiently so that we're able to deliver the goods between Durban and Durban and Johannesburg efficiently, Durban and Zimbabwe, Harare efficiently? No, we don't. So do we spend all that money, the little money that we have, building all these charge stations across the country? We will eventually get there, but this is not always the case. This is not the time to do that. So I've been looking at technologies, for example, such as hybrid vehicles. So you've got vehicles being launched every day. I think Nissan in South Africa have just launched a new hybrid vehicle. We've seen hybrid vehicles on our roads here in Zimbabwe that allow us to spend less on fuel, but go further at the same time. So we have to have a mix. So the mix is what I mean when I say streamline. So if we streamline the technologies that are made available to us by the rest of the world to suit our African realities, the great vast lengths of road we have to travel, how can we do that and still do it efficiently, on time, and produce? So that's what we need to do. We need to modify or align existing technologies with the real needs, right? Imagine an e-mobility solution that goes beyond delivering people and goods from one point to another, but offers the ability perhaps to say, run a mobile hair salon, or a carpenter can power his tools and still get back to the workshop or home for a recharge, right? Now, imagine you mix that with, say, diesel, petrol. What does that do? What does it deliver? What does it bring? As an EPC, we've been to locations where we've done work and we've gotten to the place and we've had to run a big generator to power tools and things like that. But imagine if we were able to customize a whole unit, a whole truck that's able to drive down to a location, park, and power tools on site, do other things. How much less fuel do we use? How much less of a footprint do we have? So we need to look at it from that perspective. And with respect to Tandy's business in terms of fuel supplies, that's the innovation we need. We need to be saying, you know, how many clients can purchase fuel but use it efficiently enough to actually be happy to purchase more? And because the impact is less, they can still do more. So these are the technologies that we need to look at, not not the fancy new things like, for example, one doing the rounds, green hydrogen, I think it is. We've got to exhaust what we have now to suit the needs that we have on the continent now. That's my view, is that we can't always take new technologies as they are and plant them into something if they don't quite suit what we need to deliver as a continent. Because if we can't, it is fair to say, let's bunny hop and go to the next stage and forget the one in the middle. But the one in the middle is the one that keeps rural Africa going. It's the one that keeps rural Africa running. So should we ignore it? I mean, if I take a bus that's going to travel into the rural areas of Zimbabwe, more than 700 kilometers in, who's going to actually fund or get a good return on investment in putting in a solar charge station that deep into the rural areas? So no, I don't think it's always the case. I think new technologies, when they're targeted at specific problems in Africa for a specific African solution, work. But when they're just generally global solutions, then I think we have to try and maximize what solutions we have on the ground already. We have enough sun to power Africa from just solar panels, for example. Do we need to change that wheel? I don't quite think so. But yeah, thanks, Mamadi.
Thank you. It was a little bit provocative and a little bit personal. That's why I was also trying to push Tandy before she was also to explain the same, to understand, for us to understand a little bit about the renewables and technology. So, Tandy, what do you say about that? Do new energy technology answer the Africa's energy needs? The
I
trio.
think I'm aligned. I'm really aligned with what Tafi has shared with us, which was very enlightening. I also believe that we just need to try and look at what we have before we come up with any fancy things that we think are going to be the solution for the future. Yes, they will come. There will be time for that, but I don't think that time is now. I think for me, what I see helping in the current state is to use natural resource as much as possible in the form of solar because it uses sun. So if we can try and exhaust ourselves around that, because it uses a natural resource that is available by nature, So if we can try and exhaust ourselves there, then we can in stages move forward. But to come up with all these fancy things now is really not going to help us. I mean, in the South African context, Tafi has explained to us, we currently have an energy crisis, right? So we cannot be introducing cars that are going to be electrical. I mean, then you're adding on the burden into the current energy that we are struggling with. You see, so as much as other things are a wish to have now, but I think as Africa, as the continent, we just need to do introspect and acknowledge where we are and try and put on hold some of the fancy things that we are rushing to get into our continent and deal with our own issues first, try and mitigate with the current resources as natural as possible, and then we can add on at a later stage.
Well, of course, it was also really enlightening. And as we understood here, we need to use what we have and exhaust our energy resources. Of course, we need to do a mix, but we can also rely on solar, that also not to rely on fancy energy techs. But of course, all the new technologies are really relevant to the development, sustainable development of the energy sector. Fossil fuels and renewables. Of course, we also explored that. Energy security and energy transition. What will be the best development strategy for Africa? Mr. Tafi, what do you
Yeah,
think?
that's a good question. Yeah, I think the best strategy to take is sort of follows on to what Tandy just said, which is if we focus on what we have, the natural resources that we have, and we develop those. So we've got vast tracts of land that don't have any real use to us. You know, I was looking at, for example, when you drive from the Entebbe Airport in Kampala all the way down to from the Entebbe Airport all the way up to Kampala, you see all these vast tracts of lands or these openings that are considered swamps. I mean, what would happen if we built If we actually went through there and we built solar plants there, what would happen? What would happen if we developed a way to use the stored water in a different way? I mean, we now use stored water in what do you call it, in dams as hydro. So if we look at those areas, hydro, renewable energy, solar, and we focus on those areas, I think that's the strategy that we need to look at. We also need to look at productive use of energy in the rural areas. How are we going to help we call them moms and pops, right, out in the rural areas? What are we going to do to assist them to develop, but using productive use of energy, solar water pumps, solar dryers? What other technologies can we develop that assist them in giving them more productivity, time, etc.? Yeah, that's what I think our growth strategy needs to be in that space.
Thank you, Tafi. I think maybe we have connection problems with our moderator, but I am aligned with what you're saying. And maybe just to add on the issue of education, I think also as Africa, we just need to try and make sure that there's enough information on how we can try to save the energy resources that we have, or how can we use them in such a way that we can, preserve and make sure that the distribution is equal for everyone. I think it's very, very important. I see here in South Africa, the information is really limited to urban areas, and more civilized spaces. But in the rural areas, there is a need for a drive to educate people on how we can use energy efficiently. So that's one part of education that I see as a gap currently in our continent. The second part is to try and review our syllabus for education from primary education, high school, up until tertiary education. I think there's a need to review the syllabus based on the challenges that we have as the continent. I always believe that education is not, we don't go to school just to get a piece of paper, but we need to go there so that we can solve our problems. We cannot rely on external people to come and solve problems for us. We experience these problems every day, and energy problems are escalating every day. So we experience these problems, and the solution must come within us as Africans. So that is why it's important that we review the syllabus to make sure that it channels us to respond to issues such as energy crisis that we have, and come up with strategies that will be best suited for our continent, because we cannot always look at other countries. Other countries are more developed than us sometimes. So we need to come up with the solutions that best suit our continent. And the best people to do that is us as Africans.
Yeah, that's 100% there, Thandi. I absolutely agree with you. Something that we talk about is the TVETs, right? The technical, vocational, and education training facilities, that we need to empower them some more. We've had cases or instances where good meaning NGOs have come in to assist us develop our youth, but they'll spend 5, 6, 7 days training people. And that program for me is not enough. We need to do more. We need to spend more time developing solutions that suit industry. So you'll find that industry players such as yourself, myself, have a need. We know what we need. We know what we want to see happening and where we want to be going. But it needs renewal, continuously renewed. We need to continuously improve. The technologies need to mean something to Africa, to African problems. They need to address African solutions. And you are so right, Andy. We need to look at the educational policies as part of the developmental momentum to keep Africa on course in terms of diversifying its energy needs, or even its production, to such an extent that whatever we put out is what we get in and more. Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, I love that. I love that you touched on that educational part, because it is one of those links that we miss. And a lot of times, if you look globally, a lot of our engineers are working offshore in different places across the globe. We need them here, and we need to make it viable enough for them to stay and work in Africa and develop and build Africa. Yeah, that's a brilliant point, Tandy. Brilliant.
Thanks, Tafi. I'm not sure if Mohamed is back or if he is still struggling with connection, but I hope that he'll be back to close the session. Yeah, I think just from my side, maybe the closing remarks from my side is that we are blessed to be born in Africa. We love our continent, as tough as it may be currently, maybe in the business space for us as business people in the energy space, as tough as it may be, but it's something that is exciting and it's something that is fulfilling. I get fulfilled every day to be an enabler of transport to move in and out, you know, because I give them fuel, I give them diesel. I feel excited when I have people buying bottles of gas to use in their heaters, to use in their gas stoves, you know. So we play an important role, as much as there are challenges, but it's something that is fulfilling. And I encourage all the people that are running businesses in the energy space that we must not give up on our continent. We are the solution to the energy crisis that we face in our continent. And we must always use our voices to make a difference. Voices in different spaces, be it in the government space, to make sure that the legislation is aligned, as we were talking now about education, to make sure that the legislation is revived and is aligned to our challenges. Use it in the private sector to make sure that the private sector comes together to work with communities to make sure that we deal with the energy challenges that we have. And we must not leave rural areas aside. I come from a rural area. I know how it is not to have information at your disposal. Hence, I always go back using my foundation. I always go back to rural areas to make sure that they have some information, be it in the energy space or in the STEM, you know, the whole STEM community. I always go back to educate them about that. So yes, we have energy challenges, but there will be solutions, and the solutions will be coming from us.
Now, thanks a lot, Andy. That's brilliant. I love that you can relate what you're doing to the rural areas and the rural space. And yeah, my closing remarks would be pretty much that Africa, you know, we've been waiting a long time. We're resourced by resources from elsewhere. It's probably time for us to resource ourselves with our own resources. We need to appreciate that. We've been given a leap forward by technologies created and developed maybe in other spaces and other areas, but it's time to use those technologies to our advantage. We need to start looking at how to minimize or miniaturize technologies that are global in scale, but can actually come back in and drive productivity, drive progress, especially within the rural areas. I'm passionate about the rural areas. I'm passionate about developing those rural areas. And for me, as I always say, hashtag rural will be the new urban. And that's what I live for. And that's what I want to see. Thank you very much for having me here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I believe you can hear me now. And I'm humbled to be hosting the Power of Africa 2023. And I was saved by the really brilliant speakers here. And thank you for this Power of Africa 2023. And we look forward to having you the next year. So, thank you. Koshukuru. Obrigado.
Thank you. Bye.